There's a cruel irony that shadows the life of intelligent men. The smarter he becomes, the lonelier his victories feel, and the more disappointed the women who once adored him become. Because intelligence, real intelligence, doesn't glow like charm. It burns quietly, in the corners of thought no one else dares to visit. It's the kind of light that doesn't flatter, it exposes. Kierkegaard understood this tragedy better than most. He called it the sickness unto death, the endless struggle between who we are and who the world demands we pretend to be. And when a man starts to live by truth instead of illusion, he becomes something both fascinating and unbearable. Women fall in love with his mind, but quickly discover that his mind is a battlefield. He's not looking for pleasure, he's looking for meaning, and meaning has a cost. At first, his depth feels intoxicating. He listens differently. He speaks with intent. His silence feels like a language of its own. But soon, that same silence begins to terrify her, because it's not born from mystery, it's born from conflict. Inside his mind, he's dissecting everything, even love itself. He studies his own emotions until they stop moving. He questions affection until it fades. And what woman can compete with a man's thoughts when even he can't keep up with them? Intelligence makes him self-aware, but self-awareness kills spontaneity. He cannot unsee what he sees. Every moment becomes analysis, every gesture a question, every confession a hypothesis. While other men live inside the illusion of love, he's standing outside studying it through glass. Women don't fall for intelligence because they understand it. They fall for how it makes them feel, seen, rare, chosen. But the intelligent man doesn't stay in that fantasy for long. He begins to notice patterns, cycles, contradictions. He sees her affection rise when he's distant, fade when he's close, return when he withdraws. And that knowledge poisons him. Because once a man sees love's machinery, it's hard to feel its magic. Kierkegaard wrote that the greatest danger is losing oneself while seeming to be oneself. And that's what happens to intelligent men. They perform normality, but inside, they're fracturing. They play the lover, but their mind is in exile. He wants to give her his heart, but his intellect keeps demanding evidence. She feels that hesitation, even when he says nothing. It's the quiet doubt that lives behind his eyes that makes her uneasy. She'll never admit it, but she starts to resent him for seeing her too clearly. The intelligent man doesn't lose women because he fails to love. He loses them because he can't lie convincingly enough to keep love simple. His perception turns intimacy into a mirror too sharp to look into. He notices every contradiction in her words, every small inconsistency between affection and intention. He doesn't confront it at first. He just stores it. And she feels it, the slow erosion of her power, the way his gaze becomes less romantic, more reflective. He stops reacting emotionally and starts predicting outcomes. That's the moment the magic dies for her. She realizes she can't manipulate him with emotion because he sees through its architecture. His calmness becomes infuriating. His restraint feels like rejection. What she once admired now threatens her sense of control. And so, she begins to pull away, not because he's cruel, but because he's unshakable. The tragedy is that his intelligence isolates him even in love. He wants connection, but not illusion. He wants devotion, but not dependency. He wants truth, but truth is rarely beautiful. Most people want reassurance, not reality. And when a man offers reality instead of comfort, they call him cold. Kierkegaard wrote that the crowd is untruth, but love itself is a crowd of untruths, tiny deceptions we agree to believe for the sake of warmth. The intelligent man struggles with that agreement. His mind won't stop reminding him that every I love you is also an I need you, that every promise is a bet against human nature. So while others fall freely, he calculates the gravity of the fall. He hesitates, and hesitation in love feels like betrayal. She'll call him distant, overthinker, complicated, but what she really means is this: he doesn't play by the emotional script she's memorized. He doesn't fight when she provokes him. He doesn't panic when she withdraws. He doesn't beg when she's cold. He watches patterns instead of reacting to them, and that's unbearable for someone who finds meaning in emotional control. The intelligent man's calmness destroys her leverage. His detachment turns her affection into curiosity, and then into frustration. She begins to test him, trying to awaken the fire she once felt. But he doesn't burn the same way anymore, because once a man understands the temporary nature of emotional highs, he stops chasing them. He's not addicted to the rush anymore. He's addicted to peace. And peace, to most women, feels like boredom. That's why intelligent men often end up alone. Not because they can't love, but because they've seen through the performance that love requires. They understand that to be adored, a man must pretend. He must make himself partially blind, partially foolish, partially dependent. But the intelligent man refuses to trade awareness for affection. He wants both truth and tenderness, but in this world, they rarely coexist. So he becomes what Kierkegaard would call a knight of resignation, a man who loves deeply but silently, who gives without demanding, who endures without applause. And in a world addicted to noise, that kind of love goes unnoticed. He starts to sense it slowly, in the silence between her words, in the way her laughter feels rehearsed now, in the way her eyes search for something she used to find in him but can't anymore. He knows what's coming long before it happens, because intelligence doesn't just see the present, it predicts the future. That's its curse. He can already feel the moment she'll drift away, not out of anger, but out of restlessness. She'll call it emotional distance, incompatibility, lack of spark, anything but what it truly is, the exhaustion of being seen. Because deep down, no woman wants to be understood completely. Mystery is her currency. Once she realizes he's decoded her patterns, she loses her sense of power. And no woman stays where she feels powerless. The intelligent man feels the shift and doesn't chase, not out of pride, but out of acceptance. Kierkegaard wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom, and that's what he feels now, the dizzying awareness that he's free to walk away but bound to remember. He could fight for her, he could plead his case, but he knows the truth. Love built on illusion can't survive clarity. He's learned that affection isn't lost in betrayal, it's lost in overexposure. When she's seen his mind too clearly, when she knows he's capable of surviving without her, when she realizes his peace doesn't depend on her validation, something in her admiration breaks. The very intelligence that drew her in now threatens her significance. She can't play savior to a man who doesn't need saving. This is where most intelligent men collapse, not under heartbreak, but under the weight of understanding. They don't rage or beg or lash out. They just descend into analysis. They walk through every conversation in their memory, decoding tone, context, silence. They map the emotional terrain of their loss like scientists examining wreckage. And in that dissection, they kill what remains of love. They turn the emotional into the intellectual, because feeling it raw would mean chaos. But reason cannot bury pain, it only delays it. Kierkegaard called this despair, when the self turns against itself for being too self-aware. The intelligent man becomes his own executioner. He cannot stop thinking, and so he cannot start healing. Women often mistake his calm for apathy. They don't see the war inside him, the arguments he has with his own heart at 3 a.m, the way he rehearses detachment just to feel in control, the way his silence is not emptiness, but effort. He's fighting not to collapse into bitterness, because bitterness is easy. Understanding is harder, and he understands too much. He knows she didn't mean to hurt him. He knows she left because she was chasing a feeling he couldn't give her anymore. He knows she's not cruel, she's just human. But knowing doesn't comfort him, it condemns him to empathy. He feels sorry for her even as she breaks him. That's the real punishment of intelligence. It makes you compassionate toward the very pain that destroys you. So he buries it. He pours himself into work, ideas, creation. He rebuilds his solitude like a cathedral, one brick of reason at a time, and in that stillness, something shifts. He realizes that disappointment is not a curse, it's a test. It's the world asking him, can you love without illusion? Can you care without control? Kierkegaard believed that true faith begins where reason ends. And maybe that's what intelligent men must learn, not to stop thinking, but to stop believing that everything can be understood. Because love isn't a problem to solve, it's a paradox to endure. The more he tries to explain it, the more it slips through logic's fingers. Eventually he stops trying. He lets silence do the speaking. He learns to sit with uncertainty, with longing, with the knowledge that not all questions have answers. And that's when his strength begins to return. Not the kind of strength that seeks revenge or validation, but the quiet strength of acceptance. He realizes that intelligence can protect a man from many things, failure, deception, mediocrity, but not from pain. Pain is the tuition of wisdom. You can't think your way around it. You can only walk through it. And when he finally walks through it, when he stops asking why she left and starts asking what it taught him, he discovers something he never expected. Peace that doesn't depend on anyone's presence. That peace changes him. His tone softens. His eyes grow calmer. He stops seeking to impress or be understood. His words become fewer, but heavier. And that's when the world begins to feel him again. The same women who once left start to look back, not because they miss his love, but because they finally understand what it meant. The man who once disappointed them now haunts them, not through absence, but through contrast. They measure every new man against him, the calmness, the depth, the restraint, and no one quite compares. That's how intelligence redeems itself, not by winning love, but by becoming unforgettable after losing it. There comes a point when his silence starts to speak for him. It's not the silence of retreat, but the silence of realization. He understands now that most people don't want love, they want relief. They don't want to face themselves through another person's eyes, they want distraction from their own reflection. Kierkegaard once said that the greatest form of despair is not being aware of having a self. And that's what the intelligent man sees everywhere. People running from their own emptiness, disguising it as passion, as loyalty, as connection. He once thought he could save her from that restlessness, that his depth could anchor her chaos. But now he knows that depth is not contagious. It isolates. It separates the thinker from the dreamer, the observer from the participant. When she left, she thought she was escaping the cold. What she didn't realize was that he wasn't cold. He was clear. He had already seen through the performance of affection, the way love often mirrors need, and the way need eventually becomes resentment. He had sensed the inevitable decay of idealization. He had seen her growing restless, searching for the thrill that only uncertainty can provide. He knew she wasn't chasing another man, she was chasing the version of herself that existed when love still felt new. And he didn't stop her, because he understood that truth. That's what makes intelligent men so infuriating to love. They won't play the fool. They won't act unaware just to keep the fantasy alive. Their honesty kills the illusion too early, and illusions are what keep most relationships breathing. After she's gone, the intelligent man doesn't replace her. He reflects. He doesn't drown in dating apps or validation rituals. He sits in his solitude and studies the ruins, not out of obsession, but out of duty to understanding. He wants to know why something that felt eternal ended so predictably. And somewhere between midnight and dawn, he realizes the truth. He didn't disappoint her because he lacked love. He disappointed her because he refused to lie. His authenticity suffocated her fantasy. She wanted to feel chosen, not examined, desired, not decoded, but he couldn't love blindly anymore. His love had grown eyes, and eyes ruin enchantment. As time passes, the same intelligence that once isolated him becomes his sanctuary. He learns to find comfort in his own company, not because he prefers loneliness, but because solitude is the only place his thoughts don't need translation. He begins to build quietly, not for revenge, not to prove anything, but because creation is how intelligent men heal. They turn their sorrow into systems, their memories into meaning, their heartbreak into language. Every sentence becomes a redemption. Every insight becomes a scar turned scripture. Kierkegaard would have called this the aesthetic stage evolving into the ethical. The moment a man stops chasing pleasure and begins to shape purpose, he's no longer trying to be loved, he's trying to become whole. But the world doesn't know what to do with a man like that. To most women, his calm is unnerving. His silence feels judgmental. His focus feels distant. They call him emotionally unavailable, not realizing he's simply learned not to trade his peace for temporary warmth. They mistake his boundaries for arrogance because they've forgotten what a man with inner direction looks like. He's not bitter, just selective. He's not detached, just disciplined. He doesn't need to prove worth through performance anymore, because he finally understands that no one can give you peace if your soul is at war with itself. When he returns to the world, he moves differently. He doesn't rush replies. He doesn't over-explain. He's not afraid of being misunderstood. And that quiet confidence draws people in again, like moths to a flame they swore they were done chasing. Because the truth is, intelligence becomes magnetic when it's paired with stillness. He doesn't need to chase affection anymore because his composure does the speaking. It's the kind of energy that makes others second-guess their noise. They start adjusting their tone, slowing their words, recalibrating their energy around his presence. That's the paradox of the intelligent man. Once he accepts his solitude, the world starts seeking his attention. And yet, deep inside, he knows that this admiration is temporary. He knows that curiosity will fade again once they realize his mind is not a playground, it's a mirror. Every woman who gets close enough eventually sees her reflection in his depth, and what she sees depends on her honesty. If she's grounded, she grows. If she's insecure, she runs. The intelligent man no longer takes it personally. He knows that disappointment is the tax of understanding. You cannot see clearly and still live comfortably in illusions. He's made peace with that. And in that peace lies his quiet power, the power of a man who no longer fears being misunderstood because he finally understands himself. He starts to notice something strange about his new peace. It unsettles people. His calmness doesn't inspire them, it exposes them. It makes them question why they need so much noise to feel alive. It reminds them of the silence they avoid when they're alone. He used to think understanding people was a gift, but now he sees it's a burden, because the more clearly you see others, the less clearly they see you. The intelligent man becomes a mirror, and mirrors are only loved when they flatter. The moment they reflect something true, they're resented. Kierkegaard said that truth is a trap. You cannot possess it without being possessed by it. And that's what happens to the intelligent man. His awareness owns him. It follows him into every conversation, every glance, every intimacy. He cannot escape the weight of what he knows. Women call him detached, but it's not detachment, it's exhaustion. He's tired of performing curiosity for things that no longer surprise him, tired of pretending ignorance just to keep others comfortable. He's reached a point where conversation feels like translation, turning insight into palatable pieces so others don't choke on the depth. That's why people mistake his silence for arrogance. They don't realize it's mercy. He's protecting them from truths that would ruin their illusions. And that's the curse of intelligence. It isolates you not because you're cold, but because you're too warm for people who fear the fire of honesty. In love, this becomes unbearable. The intelligent man doesn't argue anymore. He doesn't raise his voice. He lets people talk themselves into revelation. He watches how words contradict tone, how affection hides resentment, how every declaration of love carries a hint of self-interest. He forgives, but he doesn't forget. He doesn't chase explanations because he already knows them. And that's what drives people away, the way he can stay calm in moments that should provoke him. His composure feels supernatural, but it's not. It's just clarity. He's seen this pattern before and he knows how it ends. Kierkegaard wrote that, "To be a man of reflection is to live in perpetual exile." The intelligent man lives in that exile daily. He walks through the world with eyes too open and a heart too cautious. He loves like a scholar studies beauty, with reverence, but also with awareness of its impermanence. That awareness ruins the drama that keeps most relationships alive. He can't feign surprise at betrayal. He can't act shocked at hypocrisy. He can't mourn the loss of something he predicted. And so, while other men fall apart, he falls inward. His heartbreaks are internal wars, silent, private, and devastatingly organized. But here's where something beautiful happens. In that inward collapse, he begins to rebuild himself differently. He stops trying to be understood. He stops trying to convince anyone of his sincerity. He starts to realize that peace is not found in being loved. It's found in not needing to be. His solitude becomes sacred. He starts reading again, walking again, breathing again without translation. He rediscovers the small joys that don't demand performance, the taste of coffee in the morning, the way rain sounds on an empty street, the weight of a book that no one else has read. These moments don't need validation. They exist purely, quietly, perfectly. And for the first time, he doesn't feel like he's missing anything. When women from his past cross paths with him again, they sense something different. Not arrogance, not bitterness, stillness. The kind of stillness that can't be faked. It unsettles them because it reminds them of what they lost, not in him, but in themselves. They remember the man who tried to love them without pretending, who offered truth instead of comfort, who could see their soul and didn't flinch. At the time they called it pressure, now they call it depth. And in that realization lies a quiet regret, because what once felt overwhelming now feels rare. The intelligent man doesn't gloat in that moment. He doesn't need to. His revenge is the life he's built without needing to be rescued. He has turned his understanding into strength, his solitude into sanctuary. He doesn't need to prove he's valuable. The world does that for him every time it fails to produce his equal. That's the paradox of the intelligent man. He is both a blessing and a burden to those who cross his path. Too deep to forget, too complex to fully love, too honest to fake simplicity. And that's why he will always disappoint women who seek comfort over truth, because intelligence doesn't soothe, it awakens. And once you've awakened someone, you can never be forgiven for it. Something begins to shift inside him, not suddenly, but with the slow gravity of acceptance. He no longer mourns what he lost. He begins to see that the disappointment he caused was not a flaw, but a natural consequence of awakening others too soon. Kierkegaard wrote that most people live life as a misunderstanding between themselves and the world. The intelligent man finally stops trying to correct that misunderstanding. He lets people misinterpret him. He lets them project, gossip, assume. He no longer needs to explain that his silence isn't pride, that his calm isn't apathy, that his distance isn't cruelty. He's done trying to be legible to those who only understand noise. He learns that being misunderstood is the price of living authentically. And strangely, that price begins to feel cheap compared to the cost of pretending. He used to crave validation. Now he craves accuracy, to live in alignment with what he truly believes, even if it costs him admiration. He realizes that most of what people call connection is just a mutual exchange of distractions. When he stopped playing that game, people left. But the few who stayed began to mirror his stillness. They listened more, they spoke less, they didn't demand energy, they matched it. And in that small circle, he finds something he never expected: peace that feels earned. The world begins to treat him differently, though he hasn't changed much. His words carry more gravity because they're rare. His presence feels heavier because it's chosen. Women who once thought him distant now find him magnetic, but not because he's trying. It's because his self-sufficiency radiates a quiet danger. It whispers, "I want you, but I don't need you." That energy unsettles the modern soul, conditioned to confuse dependency with intimacy. Kierkegaard believed that despair comes when we base our identity on what can be lost. The intelligent man has stopped doing that. He no longer anchors himself to admiration, romance, or acceptance. He belongs to his mission, not to the moods of others. Now, when he looks at women, he doesn't seek completion. He seeks reflection. He's not drawn to beauty alone, but to energy. Quiet, grounded, intelligent energy. He's drawn to women who understand silence, who don't fear depth, who don't demand explanation for mystery, because he knows that intimacy without understanding is a cage. He doesn't want to be adored. He wants to be mirrored, to meet someone who values truth more than comfort, who doesn't confuse intensity with instability, who can stand beside him in calm and not mistake it for coldness. Such women are rare, but he's learned patience. He knows rarity is what gives value meaning. Kierkegaard once wrote that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. And that's how the intelligent man now lives. He no longer dissects every feeling or rationalizes every event. He allows life to unfold without trying to master it. Paradoxically, that's where mastery truly begins. His intelligence has matured into wisdom, the kind that no longer seeks to control but to coexist. He has become the calm in a storm he no longer needs to survive, and that calm is what makes him dangerous in a world built on fear. Because a man who has made peace with solitude, truth, and time cannot be manipulated, and this, finally, is what women sense in him: the unteachable quality of inner stability, the kind of steadiness that doesn't rise or fall with attention, the kind that neither competes nor apologizes. It's why even those who once left still orbit him in thought. They may never return, but they remember. They remember the way he made them think, the way he didn't react, the way he saw through them without judgment. And that memory becomes their quiet lesson, that real intelligence doesn't disappoint women because it fails to love, but because it loves with too much awareness. Awareness that kills illusion, but births truth. And so, as the years pass, he no longer wonders why intelligent men disappoint women. He understands now that it was never truly disappointment, it was disillusionment. They weren't let down by his love, they were confronted by his clarity. Because once a man learns to see the truth of things, he can't perform innocence anymore. He can't say words he doesn't mean. He can't pretend chaos feels like love. He can't bow to emotion when reason whispers caution. Kierkegaard wrote that purity of heart is to will one thing, and that's what he's become, a man of one will, not divided by need, not enslaved by desire, but guided by purpose so refined that even loss cannot bend it. He walks through the world now not seeking to impress or to belong, but to express what's real. His calm is misunderstood, his silence misread, but he no longer minds, because what the world calls mystery, he calls mastery. Every disappointment, every misunderstanding, every exile carved wisdom into his bones. He no longer blames women for leaving or the world for failing to understand him. He sees now that disappointment was his initiation. It stripped away everything false until only truth remained, and that truth became his armor. He's not bitter, he's not broken, he's awake. And there's something terrifying about a man who's truly awake. He doesn't chase, he attracts. He doesn't explain, he embodies. He doesn't fight for attention. He commands it by existing in alignment with what's real. The same intelligence that once made him lonely has now made him limitless. He's no longer bound by approval. He's no longer tempted by illusion. He's not the man who disappointed women anymore. He's the man they measure others against in silence, because what he gave them wasn't just affection, it was awareness. And awareness doesn't fade. It echoes, it lingers, it haunts. So to every man listening, remember this: your intelligence is not a curse unless you use it to escape your own depth. Don't shrink your truth to make others comfortable. Don't apologize for your clarity. The world will misunderstand you, but that misunderstanding is proof that you're seeing beyond it. Build your peace like a fortress. Speak only when your words can shift the air. Love without possession, lead without noise, and walk in a silence that makes the untrue tremble. Because the intelligent man's greatest power isn't in what he knows, it's in what he refuses to become. If this message reached something deep in you, if it reminded you that your depth is not your weakness, but your crown, then don't let it fade. Like this video, share it with the men who've forgotten their worth. Subscribe for more truths the world doesn't want you to hear. And if you want to support this mission, to bring philosophy back to the soul of modern men, support the channel through the link in the description. Because in a world addicted to illusions, a thinking man is a revolution.